Hello Wednesday Wanderers, I'm Ranger Erin, and today's topic is going to be about writing about nature and writing in nature. Many of the stories that you love are going to be about nature. Even some of the stories that you love that are not just about nature have nature in them as a big part of it or as the background, because nature is just such a big, important part of our life. So nature can really inform both the stories that we read and maybe those stories that we might write. Our stories that are about nature can be both fiction and nonfiction. So the difference here is that a fiction story is going to have some events and characters that are not real. So they're going to be imaginary characters, imaginary events. And our nonfiction are going to have real events and real characters. But both of these types of stories are going to be important. So our nonfiction stories, they're going to give us real, true information that are going to help us learn the hows and the whys of the world. And those nonfiction stories are going to stretch our brains. So we're going to be able to use that imagination to see the world in a different way. For instance, spiders can't really talk, but when you read Charlotte's Web, which is about a spider that can talk, or if you read Diary of a Spider, both of those are about talking spiders. And so we can see the world how the spider might see the world. So even though it's not a real character because spiders can't talk, it is giving us some good information about the world and helping us to learn about the world. Stories about nature can change the world. Many of our great writers have written about nature, and one that I want to bring up that has definitely changed the world is Rachel Carson, and she wrote a book called Silent Springs, because she noticed that she wasn't hearing birdsong as much anymore because many of our birds were starting to go extinct. They were becoming endangered because of a chemical. So she wrote a book about this, and everybody took notice of it, and we were all able to change our ways and make sure that we can bring some of these birds back. And that's why we see more of our bald eagles today, decades later after this book was published, is because that book made everybody aware of what was going on, and we were able to take action and save our bald eagles and save our hawks and so forth. For your first activity, I'm going to ask you to call up your best friend or somebody in your family, and you're going to ask them what their favorite nature book is. So you're going to ask for a recommendation for you to read, and then you're going to read this book. Bonus points if you read it outside, so you find a nice cool spot, maybe next to a tree, and sit down and read. Here are some of my books that I've got in my collection that I really love. If you're starting to work on some chapter books, these are some great books about nature that I've got in my collection. Now that we've read a little bit about nature and we remind ourselves what those stories might be, fiction or nonfiction or even poetry, we're going to take the chance to start to write our own. And to start with, you got to come up with some ideas, and a great way to do that is to just sit down somewhere and write out for about 10 minutes. You set the timer for 10 minutes, and then you just write in your journal whatever comes to your mind. And you don't worry about whether it's good, you don't worry about your spelling, you just write the whole time, and then you can read it after you're done. So I made a special journal for this. This is going to be my outdoor nature writing journal. And I set the timer, and I just wrote, and I wrote about all of the things that I could observe. And remember, when we talk about observations, it might be your sight, but it can also be your other senses as well. So maybe some sounds that you hear, maybe it's going to be some smells. If you can even taste the air, you can write that down. If you're feeling the ground or some plants nearby, you can write those things down as well. It's just whatever you are noticing. And then once you get finished, You can take a look back and see, is there an idea here for a story? Can I write a fiction, a nonfiction? Maybe I'm going to write some poetry. And you can go from there. But a great way to start to get some ideas is to just keep a journal and write those observations. Thanks for joining me this week. If you want to share a story that you came up with about nature, please go ahead and contact me. Otherwise, I will see you all later.